Jiu-Jitsu, I found something even greater than that. Met amazing people, made amazing friends. Most of my best friends will destroy me every time we train together. And I love it. And it's great, man. And they're there for me and I'm there for them.
Some coming of age to make yourselves tougher. You had to go through training. You had to deal with a lot of things. But for us in the civilian world, we don't have that ring of fire. We don't have a gauntlet to go through.
The chances of me getting into any kind of fight at this stage in my life are very, very slim. So like me walking around saying like, oh, I need to learn how to defend myself. Yes, it could happen, but most likely I'm probably not going to get into a fight. But the things I love about jiu-jitsu and the reasons why I really choose to do it are a few. First, I call it like the puzzle. Right, like it's the figuring out of where I put my hand and where I grip and where I, it's a constant like Rubik's cube, which is kind of fun to try and figure that out. The other part of it is like it's a fun way to be fit. Like I'm mostly just doing these things so I look better naked, if I'm being 100% honest. Just finding a way to different, more fun ways to be a fit, healthy person. And then the other part is the community, though that the brother and sisterhood, the family like environment that you build from. I mean, like think about it. I grew up as an only child, so I only understand this in concept. But anyone who has siblings, you probably kick the shit out of each other a couple times, but you guys love each other so much. Like there's this aspect of like, we do hard things together, which brings us together in a bond. So I'm kind of, you guys chew on whatever part you want to jump on with that, but that's kind of been my experience.
You're absolutely right. I'm so glad you mentioned the community aspect because that to me is huge, right? There's a lot of things that gets us through the door, like, learning how to fight, for example, it's a big one, right? But what makes you stay, it's everything else, right? And one of the biggest parts is a sense of community. Athan, you and I come from a military background. We know that, the brotherhood, the bonds that we create in the army that are amazing. And that's another great path too. But comparing those to the bonds and the sense of community that I found in Jiu-Jitsu, it's heaven on earth. In Jiu-Jitsu, I found something even greater than that, which is saying a lot. Met amazing people, made amazing friends. Most of my best friends will destroy me every time we train together. And I love it, and it's great, man. And they're there for me, and I'm there for them. So it becomes sort of this weird, crazy cult where we wrestle each other, but we are doing it for self-development, right? To make each other better and to provide each other support that is going to transcend that time we spend on the mats, right? So I think the community aspect is huge in something like this.
There's your community if you don't do jiu-jitsu, which is made up of people who you, went to school with, work with, see at various things. You guys do kind of the same thing. And then there's your community in jiu-jitsu, which for me is made up of people of all ages, a million different backgrounds, a million different jobs. They do everything. You cannot pin down who does jiu-jitsu, and it leads you to having the most interesting friends. I think I noticed that in my personal life too, where there was me on the road traveling prior to jiu-jitsu and then traveling after jiu-jitsu. And I would get to a town and I would go and do, a few classes, a few roles with guys at various gyms. And because of that mutual respect that jiu-jitsu is and the fact that we share this language, all of a sudden I have genuine friends in all these different cities all over the country. Like I have people I could call up and they know me and they're tight with me because we did jiu-jitsu. We speak the same language. They get it. I get it.
Yep.
All of a sudden I was getting invited out to go do stuff. Let's go do this, that, whatever. It's the most welcoming community because you have to actually earn it to earn someone's kind of respect in jiu-jitsu. Like, it's even funny. Andrea's kind of the worst about this. She probably hate that I brought this up, but she's always like, I don't really want to deal with people who don't do jiu-jitsu. I get that. Like,
I don't blame her at all.
Yeah, come on. I want that like anchor of mutual respect really badly now.
Yeah, it's like we've all gone through a self-imposed rite of passage. And after you've gone through that, you are part of the community, and that's it. You're in for life. It's like the biggest gang in the world, right? You're in, and that's it. You're one of us, and no matter what happens, we got you. We got your back. Even if we compete against each other, that's another thing. I've competed a lot, and I've had plenty of opponents that when we're in the match, we're trying to kill each other like we're enemies. The moment that timer ends, no matter who wins, We're friends for life. We make plans to get together and train, exchange knowledge. We'll add each other on social media, and we're friends. And years later, we're still friends, and that's great, man. I mean, I don't really understand how that happens. Like psychologically, it's hard to understand how well this guy that not only did he try to kill me for 5 minutes, but he actually beat me, and I lost. So I should be, I should be offended. But no, I am not. I respect this guy. I love him, and we're friends. And yeah, let's go from here. So not in a lot of places you can find that kind of connection.
Yeah, and I think that's a powerful piece of this. That I think the person who's never tried jujitsu, maybe they've heard. I mean, probably almost no one hasn't heard of it at this point.
Mhm.
But I think that the person who's never tried it, it's the things that keep them away that I find it to actually be the opposite. For example, someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna walk in there. It's gonna be a gladiator camp. These people are gonna fucking
Mhm.
like try to beat me up, and they're gonna bully me around, and they're gonna treat me like shit," which is couldn't be further from the truth. And I want more people to know that and understand that if that's what's keeping them away from walking in whatever jujitsu school that they gym that they have kind of been eyeballing, if that's what's keeping them away, then I can't express enough that it's not like that at
Yeah,
all.
it is not. I hear that a lot too. People, I don't know, man. I'm too old. I don't want to go in there and get my ass kicked. And what I say is that, well, you are not gonna get your ass kicked right away. Don't get me wrong. You are going to, but by the time you get to the point in which you are started getting your butt handed to you by your training partners, you're actually gonna enjoy it. Which is like if you never done it, like, how am I ever gonna enjoy that? But you are, because now you're in that learning curve, because now you know the basics, you know what to expect. But for people going in day one, week one, that should never be the case. And I speaking for Tyler or myself, we make it a point to ensure that that is not the case, because we want people to have an experience, understand why we're doing this. Because it'd be so easy for me to grab the new guy walking through, let me beat you up for 5 minutes and show you how good I am. Okay, that's great. That doesn't help him, right? What helps him is showing him what can happen and how good he can get if he sticks with it. So that's why they need, to your point, that's why they need to understand, realize that nothing's going to happen. It's going to be the entire opposite.
Yeah, you don't want anybody coming in and getting completely blindsided by that experience. It's hard enough to walk in that door. That's what they say is the hardest belt to get is your white belt,
Yep.
because it is hard to walk in that door for the first time, and it's so intimidating. So you really want a gym that can encourage you, and there's a process there where it's encouragement until you are ready to stand on your own 2 feet, and then you can take the ass kicking. But no one's ever going to have you do that the second you walk. Well, I'm sorry, we would never do that the second you walk in the door. And I think that's crucial. I think people should be very picky with where they start their jiu-jitsu journey and,
Yeah.
and try a lot of places and make sure they're going to have a place that's going to work with them. But that's not to say that you shouldn't be pushed. I think that's another element of it too. I don't ever want someone being so comfy that they don't understand the power of what this is, if that makes sense. So
No, absolutely.
when Ray rolls with someone for the first time, he's not going to make them tap 20 times. There's nothing, they'll learn nothing from that. But what he might do, because what I've seen him do to a lot of people, is show them that, oh, you're 200 pounds? No, you're not. He's going to get right on top of you. He's going to sweep you right over. You're going to realize you have no balance. You have no control. This person's completely in control. That is a lesson you can be shown without it having to be mean. And I think that's part of the truth thing. That's you got to see that lesson right out the door. And honestly, martial arts schools that can't show you that lesson, they're not probably teaching a real martial art. That's the old thing. You have to play along with the professor who's showing some nonsense technique. I watch a little too much McDojo Life on Instagram, I guess, but this you should be able to be shown why this works, pretty quickly and in a pretty kind way, to be honest.
No, you're right, and
Yeah.
that's where being an instructor, you have to understand how to manage and gain that intensity, right? Because if you're, regardless of your level, right, if you're only able to roll 100% and completely destroy people to make your stuff works, maybe you're missing something, right? I can definitely do that, but it is a lot harder, and it's a higher expression of the art, in my opinion, to not do that, but just to do just enough to control you, keep you on your toes, and show you, hey, look, you got me by 50 pounds, but I don't care because you're still not moving. And that's what gets people hooked, and that's where that puzzle and that problem solving that you were mentioning before and everything starts to grow, because you go, man, I need to learn this because this feels like magic, and it is not, but you know.
Yeah, that's been my personal experience with it. Is that one, going into, as a beginner into jujitsu, I was my own worst enemy. No one was out to get me. Nobody was out to teach me a lesson or show me what they know or anything. It's just like my level of intensity and effort was the problem, because and the beauty of it, like as you mentioned, is that everyone you go up against, even another white belt who's only been there for a few months, or they have learned enough control to let you kind of like do your thing and kind of like make the mistakes without kind of allowing it, like having enough skill to allow you to do those things, so that you can learn. And it's a beautiful thing. It's really it's kind of powerful. And again, anyone who's listening, you have to know that you're going to go in there, and yes, everybody in there is going to be better than you, but everybody in there is also going to meet you at your level, and allow you to kind of learn and grow without hurting you or demeaning you or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm actually chuckling over here because I'm remembering a story in regards to that. Right, when I used to work at the Combatives Academy in Fort Lewis, Washington, I was a full-time instructor for a while. This coworker of mine, his name is Marcus Edwards. Hopefully he's listening. Who knows where he is now? Great guy, amazing fighter. He was an all-army champion several times back in the day. Just incredible fighter, very big guy. He was probably like over 300 pounds, and still will train all the time. Not a problem, no big deal, right? But sometimes we'll get soldiers coming into open mats or coming into like test stuff out that they don't really think, or they didn't really think Combatives was gonna work. And Marcus was coming, hey Ray, come here real quick. Go beat up that guy. It's like, dude, why? Why don't you beat him up? It's because I'm big, man. If I beat him up, no one's gonna care. But you're little, so you need to go show him. I was like, all right, I guess I go. So I was the mat enforcement because of my size, because I was a small guy.
Yeah, there's nothing more humbling. And so to Tyler's point from earlier when he was mentioning how good his wife Andrea is, someone who's smaller than you, not as strong as you, and will just kick your ass like with ease, and then not to overemphasize anything to do with like gender roles and everything else, but as a man, a strong man, and this has happened to me many times in many situations, a woman just like handing you your ass on the daily basis consistently, there's a level of humility that comes with that.
Yeah, but even mentioning the gender, since you kind of touched up on it, we can expand on it. It doesn't even matter. When I roll with really good females, when I roll with Andrea, for example, which we are around the same size, and the fact that she's a female has nothing to do with the interaction. I don't go in there going, oh, well, I'm going to roll with her because she's a woman. Because I know I'm going to do jiu-jitsu, because if I don't do jiu-jitsu, she will do jiu-jitsu on me. And it doesn't matter. It's anyone's game. Going back to the Army Combatives example, it's probably the only sports discipline or competition that I've seen in which you see males and females competing against each other, which is what happened in Army Combatives tournament. And it doesn't matter. You see these women that are amazing just beating men all the time because they are so in tune with their technique that it doesn't really matter. At that point, gender doesn't matter. So, I mean, how empowering is that, right?
You can't ever judge your opponent by anything that you think you can. I've rolled with big guys who don't actually, you find out after you can almost tell instantly when you grab someone, by the way, if they've got a good amount of training or not. And I've rolled with giant dudes who it's like, oh, you're pretty new to this, and you kind of flop them around. But then you roll with, some tiny looking, dorky, nerdy guy in the corner, and I mean, he messes you up for 5 minutes, and you learn pretty quick that there's no standard of being good at this. They're just this technique transcends pretty much any I don't know, demographic you could pick.
Yeah, it's not. Your skill is not necessarily connected to your physicality. So.
Yeah, sometimes you deal with kids who've been doing it since they were 2 years old,
and
yeah. They're essentially a black belt, but they just can't have it yet because they're not 16 or whatever. There's some kids that can mess you up if you don't know any better. Some of our kids in our kids programs could roll circles around brand new people. Mason in particular, if it just came down to pure technique, he could mess up a day one person 100%. Pretty good.
100%. I've gone against 16, 17-year-old kids in open mats that completely destroy me. I go, man, how long you been training for? They go, 15 years since I was 2. I was like, okay, yeah, no wonder. You've been training the same as me, but you're young and I'm not, so there you are. So it's amazing.
Yeah, Tyler touched on. So it kind of brings me to the sport of jujitsu, which Tyler touched on a little while ago. And you guys definitely have a culture of like emphasizing, you encouraging people to try to compete, even if it was just like one time. And I'm kind of just curious about your guys' mindset and philosophy on competition and the sport of jujitsu versus, self defense or fitness or whatever else.
My first ever professor, Sonny Parlin in Bradenton, Florida, who's a good friend and has helped us out, given us lots of great advice with airlock. He described the I don't know, the ranking of how difficult jiu-jitsu can be like this. He says at the very top is an actual fight. One level below that, that's a competition. A level below that, you've got maybe an open mat with a lot of different people there. Then you've got an open mat with the people you normally train with. And so there's levels of intensity that you can build up to. And so once someone has engaged in those other levels and they're comfortable going to other open mats and rolling with lots of different people, because we want our guys and gals to roll with lots of different people, then maybe it's time to think about competing, because it's a totally different experience. It is it's a total mind fuck for days in advance, weeks in advance, right up until you start going. The adrenaline is like nothing else. You're gonna get out there and absolutely suck immediately because it's so intimidating. But it does make you better. A lot of people talk about how it's I've heard it said one competition is worth 3 months of training or something like that. And I'm not sure if I completely agree with that, but I know that's a lot of people's opinions. So it's worth
Yeah.
merits some consideration, I guess.
No, I agree. So it also depends on how you approach it, of course. A lot of people compete for lots of different reasons. Some guys are just natural athletes and they're at their peak of jiu-jitsu and physicality. They want to be one of the best in the world and all this stuff, win all these stars. That's great. That's amazing. I fully support it, right? For the rest of us, especially as we age, I mean, I'm closer to 50 than I'm to 40, right? So I'm probably not going to go be a world champion. I could be a Masters world champion, but that's not real. So why do I compete? Like, why do I care, right? Why do I pay $200 to get a $25 medal? I mean, that's like the worst deal ever, right? It's simply because the way that I like to see it, it's an extension of training, right? The only thing, or one of the few things that you can really mimic at the gym is that fight or flight response, right? When I'm rolling with Tyler, for example, no matter how hard we're going, I don't feel that way because I know he's truly not trying to hurt me. Granted, accidents do happen. Maybe I get injured because of an accident and it's fine, but he's not actively trying to hurt me, right? So I don't feel that. That adrenaline release, that fight or flight response that we feel, it's exactly what we're going to have in a real fight. And that is what we need to learn to control, right? Our brain doesn't really know the difference, right? When you're in fight or flight, your brain doesn't know that you're in fight or flight because you're fighting for your life out on the street or because you're in a competition. Fight or flight is fight or flight, the same. So the more you get used to working through those emotions, the better you are going to be. Because if you can apply jiu-jitsu at a somewhat high level when you're having all that craziness going through your brain and all those hormones going through your body, when you find yourself calm and relaxed, you're going to do much better. So that's why, to your point, that's why people say it's equal to 3 months of training. I don't know if that's the exact number. I don't know if that's even something we can quantify, but definitely competing will bring your game up. And that's why after a good competition, you show up to the gym the next week and you're just raking everybody because you're at that point, you're at that level.
And it's you versus you. And like that's at least how we approach it as a gym. Like I'm the king of bronze medals. I really like my bronze medals because I went in and did something that was super hard for me, and I didn't completely lose. I think I have 2 bronzes in 4-man divisions, so I didn't get swept completely. Right, I did something, and that was an accomplishment. Every time any one of our guys gets a bronze medal, a silver medal, I'm stoked. If they don't get a medal but they fought really hard, I'm stoked. As a gym, as airlock, I think our take is you're there. It's you versus you. Great if you win that match. Fantastic. Congratulations. But you went there and the hard part was just showing up
100%.
and slapping hands because it's a lot to put yourself through.
That is your biggest opponent.
That's what we respect, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, for me personally, and I've talked about this before, so you guys have probably heard it offline, but I suffer from severe competition anxiety. And that's not going to go away. I've competed many times. I'm probably going to do it a lot more times before my time's over. It doesn't matter. I get really anxious. And the day off, I had the worst and the most negative self-talk you can imagine. I get in the car driving to the tournament, and that is the worst pity party ever. why am I doing this? I'm tired. I should be in bed. I'm too old for this. I'm gonna get hurt. Why do I even bother? Blah blah. Blah. Everything. And now I got to the point that I know it's gonna happen, so I just let that little movie play in my head. And then when it's over, I go, okay, cool. I don't care. I'm still gonna do it because I gotta defeat that barrier that I'm self-imposing in front of me that is not gonna let me perform. Because I feel that if you can get that under control in such an extreme circumstance, then it's gonna start ruling your life, right? Next thing you know, it's gonna bleed into other circumstances of your life. Am I gonna make this decision at work? Well, what if it goes wrong? What if this, that, and then now you're slowing yourself and limiting yourself into what you can do in life because it becomes a habit, just like everything you do, right? So that's why, in that sense, jiu-jitsu is so good for self-development, especially if you put yourself in that stressful situation and you learn to deal with the worst enemy that you will ever have, which is you.
Yeah, I think that's been one of the most powerful pieces of jujitsu for me personally because I love self development, self discovery. You know the introspection that comes with any endeavor, and I feel like jujitsu's just been an amazing teacher. And I found that the people who are really good at jujitsu, they're not the best athletes, they're not the most fit, they're not they've got the best mindset, they've got a philosophy and a perspective on life that is just powerful. And that's what ends up making them so good at jujitsu, because there's like you said, there's all these life lessons that you pick up, and you can apply them to every single aspect of your life.
Yep.
You can't we can't sugar or well, we can sugarcoat it too if you want. You guys both, because you were in the military, have some experience of some, I don't know, a challenge, right? Some coming of age to make yourselves tougher. You had to go through training, you had to deal with a lot of things. But for us in the civilian world, we don't have that ring of fire. We don't have a gauntlet to go through. And the truth of it is, a lot of us are just little bitches. And once you start doing jiu-jitsu for a while, you're like, oh, I'm noticing that the bitch is leaving my system, and I'm not that way anymore. You get tougher over time. No matter if you're talking physically tough or whatever. I actually was trying to figure out before we started recording, like, how many years I've been doing this. I went back, I scrolled back through my Instagram to when I first started jiu-jitsu, and there's a picture of me holding up my arms, and there's bruises. Like, there's 100 bruises all over my arms. And I realized that it's not just mental, it's physical. Like, I don't bruise anymore at all. And it's not like I'm doing less jujitsu or going less hard. It's super rare if I find a bruise on my body. It's just your body toughens up, your mind toughens up. And again, if you don't have that, I think the military could be one way of going about it, but for the rest of us, this is one pathway to become tougher. And at the end of the day, we all want that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we gotta seek it too, because whether it's jiu-jitsu or the military, and I'm sure Ethan can agree with that. It is very easy to just skate through and do just enough to be okay, but not put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Only a few of us choose to go, okay, I'm going to go the extra mile. I'm going to volunteer for this super hard school, for this super hard training. I'm going to get on the mats and roll with the toughest, meanest looking dude in the room, no matter how the outcome is, because I want to put myself there and be ultimately better for it. But it also has to be a conscious decision, because the norm rather than the exception is to be comfortable, and we can find comfort anywhere because that's what we do as humans, but that's not going to help us grow. It's just going to help us stay where we are.